Let's get started with today's story. It all began one Friday evening. Nancy, my wife of 7 years, walked into the living room, her heels clicking sharply on the hardwood floor. She was dressed to kill in a shimmering black dress that hugged her curves in ways I once found irresistible. I looked up from the game on TV, already sensing trouble. "Where are you off to, dressed like that?" I asked casually, though the tightness in my chest betrayed me. "It's Chloe's birthday party," Nancy replied, not meeting my gaze as she adjusted her earrings. I turned the volume down on the TV. "You mean the one where your ex, Andrew, is going to be?" "We talked about this, Nancy. I don't think it's appropriate. I don't want you to go." She sighed, rolling her eyes in a way that made me feel like a petulant child. "Stephen, Andrew is Chloe's friend too. I can't just not show up because he's there. That would be ridiculous. Nancy, he's not just some friend. He's your ex," I said, my voice hardening as I stood up. "You think it's a good idea to go to a party where he'll be?" Her expression darkened, her tone clipped. "This isn't about Andrew, it's about Chloe. She's my best friend, and I'm not going to skip her party because of your insecurities." "Insecurities?" I repeated sharply, the words slicing through me. "This isn't about insecurity, it's about respect. I don't want my wife partying with a guy who used to sleep with her." She threw her hands up in frustration. "Oh, for God's sake, Stephen. It's not like that. It's not just about him being there." I pressed, taking a step closer. "It's the history. The way he still looks at you." "The way he still," she interrupted, her voice rising. "Still interested? Is that what you're scared of?" I asked. "Yeah, Nancy," I said, my anger finally spilling over. "I am scared of that. I trust you, but that doesn't mean I'm comfortable with you spending the night drinking and partying with the guy you once loved. It's disrespectful to me, to our marriage." Her lips pressed into a tight line as her eyes blazed. "You know what, Stephen? I'm tired of this. I'm tired of you trying to control me. You don't own me. I can go anywhere I want, and I can do whatever I want. You're my husband, not my keeper." The words hit me like a slap. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to stay calm. "This isn't about control, Nancy. It's about mutual respect. I'd never put you in a situation like this if the roles were reversed. Can't you see that?" Nancy crossed her arms, her stance defiant. "No, Stephen, what I see is you trying to guilt-trip me into staying home." "Well, I'm not doing it. It's Chloe's party, and I'm going. There's nothing you can do about it." I stared at her, the woman I thought I knew, feeling the knot in my stomach tighten. "If you walk out that door, Nancy, you're walking out on more than just this argument." Her eyes flashed with anger, but she said nothing. Grabbing her purse, she marched to the door, her heels echoing in the silence between us. As she opened it, she turned back, her voice cold and final. "Don't wait up." I stood there for a moment, frozen, as the sound of the door shutting echoed in my mind. I spent the next few hours on edge. Every time my phone buzzed, my heart jumped. I wanted to call her, demand she come home, but I knew it would only make things worse. So I sat in the darkness, the TV playing some forgettable show, my thoughts spiraling. Eventually, exhaustion took over, and I went to bed, though sleep didn't come easily. My mind was restless, swirling with unanswered questions. When I finally drifted off, it was short-lived. Around 3 a.m., my phone buzzed, dragging me out of a restless slumber. Groggy, I reached for it, squinting at the screen. Chloe's name glared back at me. "Hello?" I answered, my voice groggy and rough with sleep. "Stephen," Chloe's voice was slurred, her words tumbling over one another. She was clearly drunk. "Wake up, you loser." I rubbed my eyes, trying to process what I was hearing. "You're calling me in the middle of the night? What the hell do you want? Are you drunk?" "Chloe, totally drunk," she slurred, giggling like it was all a joke. Then her tone shifted suddenly, cutting through the haze of her intoxication with cruel intent. "Your wife, Stephen, your precious Nancy, is finally with a real man again. They're in bed with Andrew right now." "What?" I said, sitting up, my pulse suddenly racing. "You heard me," Chloe continued, her words laced with venom. "They're in bed, laughing, kissing, doing all the things she used to fake with you. My stomach turned. What the hell are you talking about? She's been telling me for years how you couldn't satisfy her, Steven. Chloe sneered. How unhappy you made her, how she faked everything in bed just to keep you happy. Do you know why she stayed? Money, Steven. That's all she stayed for, your money. But now she's in bed with a real man, and she's finally getting what she deserves. I was frozen, unable to form a response. The words hit me like a series of sharp blows. You don't believe me, do you? Chloe taunted. Her laughter was cruel and hollow. I'll send you proof, a video of them so you can see it with your own eyes, you pathetic loser. Before I could respond, she hung up. The silence in the room was deafening. My hands shook as I stared at the dark screen of my phone. My mind raced through every possible explanation. Chloe was drunk. This had to be some twisted joke, right? Minutes later, my phone buzzed again. This time it was a message from Chloe. I hesitated, dread pooling in my stomach, but I couldn't stop myself. I opened the message. There it was, a video file. My heart pounded as I clicked it, my hands trembling so badly I almost dropped the phone. The screen lit up with grainy footage, but the scene was unstable. There she was, Nancy, my wife, in Andrew's arms. Her hair was messy, her body entwined with his in a way that left no doubt about what they'd been doing. I stared at the screen, my breath caught in my throat. A sickening mix of disbelief, rage, and heartbreak swirled in my chest. This was the woman I'd built my life around, the woman I trusted, and now everything I thought I knew was crumbling before my eyes. I sat in the room for what felt like hours, unable to move. My mind was racing, but at the same time, I was numb. The video Chloe sent me kept playing over and over in my head. I couldn't escape the image of Nancy and Andrew tangled together in a way I had never imagined. My stomach churned, my chest felt like it was being crushed, and yet I couldn't move. Eventually, I stood up, my body feeling like it wasn't mine. I grabbed a bag and threw a few clothes in, my hands shaking the entire time. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew I couldn't stay in that house. As I packed, something inside me snapped. I walked into the living room, grabbed the framed wedding photo of us, and without thinking twice, I tore it in half. But I didn't stop there. I went to the closet, grabbed our marriage certificate, the one that had meant so much to both of us, and tore that in half too. It seemed fitting somehow. I placed the torn pieces on her pillow, where she would find them when she came back. I wanted her to see it, to understand what I was leaving behind. With that, I grabbed my bag and walked out of the house. My heart felt like lead in my chest as I drove to the hotel, checked in, and dropped my things in the room, staring at the empty space. The silence was unbearable. My thoughts were spiraling, and my chest felt tight with anxiety. I needed someone to talk to, someone who might understand, or at least someone who could offer me some clarity. I reached for my phone and called Mark, my best friend. I couldn't process this alone. Mark, you need to meet me now. It's urgent, I said, my voice shaky but controlled. Urgent? What's going on? He asked, his tone full of concern. I'll explain in person, I said, my voice still shaky. We met at a bar near my hotel, the dim lighting doing little to hide the exhaustion on my face. Mark eyed me as I sat down. What's going on, man? You don't look good. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. Nancy, she went to Chloe's birthday party, and she slept with Andrew. Mark blinked, clearly stunned. What? Yeah, I said, nodding. Chloe sent me a video of them together in bed. She told me everything. Mark sat back, his expression a mix of disbelief and concern. After a moment, he spoke, his voice quiet. Are you serious? That's brutal. I nodded, my jaw tightening. I don't even know how to process this, man. Chloe told me that Nancy's been miserable for years. She faked everything with me in bed just to keep me happy, and the only reason she stayed with me was for the money. Mark was silent for a long time, trying to piece together what he had just heard. That's messed up, man. I don't even know what to say. I shook my head, feeling that same sickening pit in my stomach. I don't know what to do. Everything I thought I knew is falling apart. Mark leaned forward, his tone changing to something more serious. Listen, the first thing you need to do is protect yourself, Stephen. This isn't just about the betrayal. It's about your future, your assets, your life. You need to make sure she doesn't walk away with everything. I know a good lawyer who can help with the divorce. They'll make sure you don't get screwed. I felt numb. Divorce? The thought hit me like a ton of bricks, but I knew Mark was right. I had to protect myself from whatever Nancy was planning to take from me. I ran a hand over my face, the weight of everything settling in. I never saw it coming, but now, everything I thought I knew is gone. Mark gave me a reassuring look. We'll get this sorted, man. You're not alone in this. We stayed at the bar for a while. After a few more drinks, I decided I'd had enough and headed back to my hotel. The next morning, I grabbed my phone and saw a few missed calls from Nancy, along with a couple of texts. Stephen, where are you? Call me, we need to talk. I stared at the screen, the knot in my stomach tightening. What could she possibly say to explain this? And even if she tried, would I care? I decided I wasn't ready to deal with her yet. Instead, I called the lawyer Mark had recommended. It felt surreal arranging a meeting to discuss the end of my marriage, but I knew it had to be done. That afternoon, I met with a lawyer named Linda. She was sharp and professional, immediately reassuring me that I could protect myself. I provided the evidence of Nancy's infidelity, which she noted would be crucial for the case. Linda began drafting the necessary paperwork to start the divorce proceedings and safeguard my assets. The next day, I went back home to pick a few more things. Pulling into the driveway, I noticed her car. My chest tightened. For a moment, I considered turning back, but I forced myself to go inside. I had to face her sooner or later. The house was quiet, eerily so, and for a moment, I wondered if she'd left. But then I heard soft footsteps from the kitchen. Nancy appeared in the doorway, her face pale and drawn. She looked like she hadn't slept, and her eyes were red from crying. Stephen, she started, her voice shaky. We need to talk. I dropped my bag by the door and crossed my arms, leaning against the wall. Talk about what, Nancy? About how you slept with Andrew. About how you lied to me for years. She flinched at my words, but didn't deny them. It wasn't like that, she said weakly. Then tell me, Nancy, I snapped, my voice rising. What was it like? Because from where I'm standing, it looks exactly like that. Her lower lip trembled, but she didn't cry. I made a mistake, Stephen. I was drunk, and Andrew, he was just there. I cut her off. Don't try to blame this on alcohol or Andrew. You made a choice, and according to Chloe, it wasn't the first time you've questioned our marriage, how unhappy you were, how unsatisfied you were. Her eyes widened in shock. Chloe? What did she tell you? She told me everything, I said, my voice cold. She sent me a video of you and Andrew in bed. She told me all about how you've been miserable, how you stayed with me for the money, how you faked everything in our marriage. Do you know what it's like to hear that? To see that? She fell silent, tears streaming down her face. I wanted to feel something, anger, pity, even regret, but all I felt was emptiness. I've already seen a lawyer, I said after a moment, my tone flat. We're done, Nancy. I'm filing for divorce. You have 2 days to pick your stuff and leave the house. Stephen, please, she begged, stepping closer. Don't do this. We can fix this. I love you. Don't, I said sharply, stepping back. Don't say you love me. Love doesn't look like this. I grabbed my bag and headed for the door. As I opened it, I turned back to face her one last time. I hope you find whatever it is you were looking for, I said quietly before walking out. The divorce process was grueling, but with Linda's help, I navigated it. Nancy's initial pleas for reconciliation eventually turned into cold negotiations, and by the end, it was clear there was nothing left between us. I kept the house, and I wasn't required to pay her alimony or divide any assets. Mark was a constant support during those months. He dragged me out of my funk, made sure I didn't spend every night drinking alone, and even introduced me to new people when I was ready. It wasn't easy, but over time, I started to rebuild. I sold the house, moved into a new apartment in the city, and threw myself into work. Slowly but surely, I began to heal. Nancy became a distant memory, a lesson learned the hard way. I didn't know if she got back with Andrew after the divorce, but honestly, I didn't care. I had moved on. The scars from the past would always be there, but I had learned to live with them. I now knew I deserved better. As I looked ahead, the future felt full of possibilities, and I was eager to see where it would take me. Thank you for watching.